Yeah. And when we really just allow me to touch on something, Mr. Radido, when we think about purpose is all about service.
Yes.
Yeah. Have you ever had that statement where somebody would say, this thing is serving its purpose? Because purpose is always about service.
Yes.
And so the reason this is my mission statement is because I do want to live a life of the calling. Yeah. And I think this was in one of Paul's letters, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
That the Bible says many are called, but few are chosen.
Yes.
Meaning God has called all of us into service, but only few really take up the call and make something of it.
Yes.
So I pray to be among those few who will take up the call, and I will do what God put me on the face of this earth to do. Yeah.
I love that. And you're not just doing that, you are concerned about greatness. You're concerned about helping people and organizations to get into their greatness. Why are you fascinated about greatness? Why not any other level?
To be honest, Mr. Radito, because number one, we serve a great God, and because we are created in His image, we were designed actually for greatness. But unfortunately, many people live very subpar lives or mediocre lives, if I could put it that way. And then there's so much greatness in each one of us. It just looks different. Yeah. But not many people live to realize it. And I remember I once had a preaching by the late Dr. Miles Monroe, and he said the wealthiest place on the face of the earth is a graveyard, because there are books that have not been written, there are songs that have not been sung, there are plays that were not acted out, because many people die with their potential. And so my work as a coach, which is something I'm very passionate about, is to help people discover really where does my greatness lie? What has God called me to do? What are my greatest gifts? How am I able to nurture my passions, and become the best, the highest version of myself? Yeah. So I'm very fascinated with the greatness that God has put in each one of us. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. What I hear you say is that when purpose is fulfilled, it is greatness that manifests. Is that right?
100%.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Thank you so very much. I'll let you now do your presentation, and then I'll come back with a lot more questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Radido. Again, just like you, I'm really passionate about leadership. I'm passionate about purpose. And many times when we think about leadership, we just look at it from a corporate perspective. And I do know that even as we have our discussion today, I will lean a little bit on that end. But the truth is, we are all leaders. And I know some people may disagree with this, but I do believe every human being is a leader. One, you are a leader to yourself first.
Yes.
We are all leaders in our own capacity because we influence ourselves to make decisions. Yeah. Mr. Radido, when you woke up in the morning, you influenced yourself on what you would eat, what you would wear, where you would go. You influence yourself. Yeah. And so we are leaders at a personal level first, and then we are leaders then in a corporate sense.
Yes.
And when we talk about purpose, I love a definition I once came across, and this person, I think it was in a book, and they said that your purpose is simply the way in which you serve the world that inspires you. And that spoke to every part of my being.
Yes.
It's simply the way you serve the world in a way that inspires you. And every human being has purpose, Mr. Radido, and I might add, not just every human being, but everything that exists. Even the things that have been invented, they were invented or innovated for a purpose.
Yes.
Yeah. Whoever designed the chair designed it to be sat on.
Yes.
Yeah. Whoever designed books or whatever, it was designed to be read or written. Everything serves a purpose. Yeah. And so when we then begin to tie the two, because I do believe that purpose and leadership go hand in hand. It's a symbiotic relationship.
Yes.
Yeah. And when we look at leading with purpose, what does this really mean? It means to inspire, it means to influence, and it means to guide people in a way that is aligned with a group's goal, if you're to look at it from a corporate context. Yeah. So we inspire as leaders. When we are leaders leading teams, We are there to inspire people, we are there to influence them, and we are there to guide them in a way that is aligned with the group's goal. If it is an organization, a company, a business, ultimately we are inspiring and influencing people to work towards this common goal. Yeah. And so leading with purpose, Mr. Radido, doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the bottom line, but it does affect the bottom line. That's the beauty about it.
Yes.
It's really not about, how much money are we going to make as a company or as an organization or even as an individual, but it really does affect purpose. And it does affect the bottom line. And as we move along with our discussion, you're going to see a little bit about that. And so allow me to just share for 3-4 main reasons why I believe it is important to lead with purpose. Yeah, as a leader. So why is it really important? And after that, then I'll briefly touch on the how. Yeah. And so number one, Mr. Radido, it's very important for us to lead with purpose as leaders because it aligns our goals and our objectives. Purpose is, I look at purpose like the North Star, or what we call the true north. Yeah, and it's a guiding light of what we want to accomplish. When we lead with purpose, we are giving clarity to what we want to achieve. We are living in a world where there's so much happening, and sometimes, Mr. Radido, and I know you'd bear witness, we are heading to 2024 in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Yeah.
Yes.
And in January, everyone is always very excited about goals and objectives. You know, we get out our journals, we write everything that we want to accomplish. But research has shown that in 2-3 weeks' time, many people begin dropping off from the things that they are committed to do. And I, as a coach, one of the reasons I've realized this happens is because people are not aligning their goals and their objectives, even to something that is meaningful to them. Yeah. So people just set goals and objectives, you know, I want to accomplish this, I want to do this, I want to go here, but it doesn't mean anything to them. And many times, when something is not meaningful to us, we hardly ever put in as much effort in it. But when something is meaningful to you as an individual, trust me, you will do whatever it takes for you to accomplish it. If a goal means much to you, if it is valuable to you, the chances of achieving that goal are much higher as opposed to just setting a generic goal for the sake of setting it or merely because everybody is doing it. Yeah. So when we walk or when we lead with purpose, we are basically being objective.
Yes.
Yeah. We are deciding what is it that is meaningful to me, what is it that is meaningful to my organization or my business, and how are we able to just get to a place where we achieve that. Yeah. So when we align our goals and our objectives to our purpose, to our values, that's the first step to success, Mr. Radido. And it gives us clarity. Yeah. Because when you know what you want to accomplish, it clears your mind from so many other things.
Yes.
Yeah. It gives us clarity. When our objectives and our goals are aligned to our purpose, we have clarity of mind. We don't even feel like we have too much going on because then we know what it is that we want to accomplish. The second reason why leading with purpose is important is because it sharpens focus. Yeah. And I think if there ever was a time people need focus, it is now. We live in a world where there is so much distractions. Yeah, there's so much noise around us. There's, you know, news feeds, there's social media feeds, there are emails, there are family issues, there are relationship issues. There's so much happening around us. And I think at some point during the pandemic, people also started feeling very overwhelmed. And I remember reading a certain article that was talking about how people got depressed a lot, especially during the pandemic. It just felt like the world was happening and coming at people from many directions. But when we are living lives of purpose and when we are leading with purpose, Mr. Radido, then we begin to have what we call tunnel vision. You know, and we begin to zero in and focus in on what we want to accomplish. Yeah. And once we have focus, we are automatically able to hit our goals more effectively and even much faster. Yeah. The other benefit of even having the focus that purpose creates is that it increases the quality of our work. Mr. Radido, when you sit down, for instance, you decide, you know what, tomorrow I need to come up with a 10-pager proposal for this and this. And you wake up in the morning, you prepare yourself, you get to the office, you decide, you know what, I'm not checking my emails, I'm putting my phone on silent, I'm getting to work, I'm giving myself 3 hours to sit down and get this thing done. Chances are, without any distraction, you will actually be able to accomplish what you had purposed to do.
Yes.
Yeah. So it eliminates distractions along the way. Yeah. It helps us to avoid meandering and wasting time even on the wrong goals. And another advantage of even having focus is that you are able to also reduce wastage of resources. There's nothing as bad as seeing an organization wasting resources on things that are not even necessary or things that are not even aligned with their goals.
Yes.
And this happens every other day. I'm a certified trainer, but guess what? Sometimes training is not necessarily the solution to an organization's challenges. You know, it could be another approach. But because we have this, mindset of, oh yeah, this is not working, we need training or we need a retreat. And so you find sometimes organizations or leaders are wasting resources because they also lack focus. They lack the understanding of what they aim to accomplish or in terms of their goals and objectives. Yeah. And it also helps reduce the time in making decisions. Sometimes organizations can waste so much time in boardroom meetings. And yet, when we are aligned with our purpose and we understand what we want to accomplish, when we have focus, then guess what? Making decisions is much faster because it eliminates so much of the distraction. It eliminates what is not necessary and you remain with just the important stuff. So I do believe that purpose is very important when we are in our leadership journey, Mr. Radido, because it gives us focus. And I love something I once heard Mr. Warren Buffett saying, and he said that one of his key secrets to success was learning to say no. And the first time I heard that, I was like, is that really a good thing? And he said he learned at a very early age to say no to so many things so that he can say yes to the most important things, the things that are valuable and meaningful to him and his organization. And we know Mr. Warren Buffett is one of the wealthiest people in the world. So it has worked for him because of that kind of a tunnel vision, that kind of a focus on what is meaningful. The third reason why I believe leading with purpose is important, it keeps us resilient and adaptable.
Yes.
We are all barely just recovering from COVID. There was so much challenges and hardships that organizations underwent during the pandemic. We know of even big organizations shutting down, offices were closed, people were working remotely. And sometimes, and I'm not necessarily saying that organizations that shut did not have purpose. That's not what I mean. But I mean that many times purpose has the ability to keep us resilient.
Yes.
It keeps us going, It becomes our driving force. And and as leaders, it even gets us out of bed in the morning.
Yes.
There are those days, Mr. Radido, I'll be honest, when I was in the corporate world, sometimes I just did not feel like getting up and going to work, because at some point you feel like, is this really it?
Yes.
But when we understand our purpose very clearly, purpose for ourselves and purpose for organizations, then it gives us that ability to even recalibrate when we need to. It gives us the ability to pivot. We know where we are going, but then when hardships come in between, we can always recalibrate and figure out what other route can get me to where I need to go. And it gives us that excitement of saying, you know what, this isn't working, but you can try this one, because we are not going to give up. So purpose has the ability to keep organizations and even leaders resilient, adaptable, instead of brooding and ruminating on issues. Oh, this is not working. Purpose has the ability to keep you going.
Yes.
It refocuses and even recenters your attention on what matters, so that then you are able to accomplish your goals. And lastly, I would also add that purpose powers performance. At the end of the day, every for-profit organization or company has to look at the bottom line. That's just a reality. That's a fact. Because they are employees to be paid. They are investors and need return on their investment. And guess what? Purpose powers performance. Because then when work is meaningful to you as a leader and even to the teams that you're leading, then it gives you that drive to continue doing. It increases your output. It increases even your well-being at work. And then you're automatically able to be more productive, and this in turn yields better results. And so those are the four main reasons I would say why it is important to lead with purpose. And so allow me to share just briefly 4 C's. I call them my 4 C's of how we can lead with purpose. So we started with the why, and we'll just briefly delve into the how. Yeah. And the first C is clarity. So what do I mean by clarity? I mean, for you to be able to lead with purpose as a leader, leading yourself and even leading teams or an organization, you need to have clarity on your own purpose first, and then that of your organization, and then you would find areas of convergence. It is important, Mr. Radido, as leaders to understand what our own purpose is as individuals. Yeah, we must know why we want to lead effectively. Yeah, we must know where we are leading people to. Yeah, are people just following us blindly when we ourselves don't even know where we are going? People need to understand what their purpose is. And the truth is, the journey of discovering purpose is not something that happens overnight. There are people truly who are blessed enough, they understood it or they knew from a very young age, this is what I know I'm called to do. But the reality is, it's a journey of discovery. It's a day-by-day journey. Yeah, and we don't just discover purpose for our own selves. We discover purpose also for our organization. Yeah, what do you want the organization to do? What value do you want the organization to add to society? Because again, going back to my very first point earlier, purpose is about service. Every organization is serving community. Yeah. So what are you serving the community with? What do you want the community to remember your organization? What kind of value, what kind of offering are you giving to your community or your clients or the society in which you are serving? Yeah. What kind of dent do you want to leave, Mr. Radido? You as Mr. Radido, as an individual, what kind of dent do you want to leave in this universe? How do you want to be remembered? What difference do you want to make? For us to lead effectively, we must understand and walk that journey of discovering our own purpose and also doing the same for our organizations. And we are in a society where when you walk into offices, you just find printouts or wall hangings with the purpose, mission, values.
Yes.
And sometimes it's very generic. I'm not saying it's always the case, but sometimes it can be we are just doing it for the sake of doing. Yeah. But at the end of the day, Mr. Radido, it must mean something, and not just to you as a leader, but even to the people that are working with you. Do your employees understand what the purpose of the organization is? Or do people just come to work saying, I'm coming to make my money and I'm going back home? Whatever people are doing in the course of the day for 8-10 hours, it must mean something to them. And when you identify your own purpose as a leader, the kind of dent you want to leave in the universe, you understand the purpose of your organization, then you figure out how to marry both of them. It will bring meaning to your work as a leader, and it will bring meaning even to the employees that you work with and to the community that you serve. Yeah. And so, as a coach, I love working with questions. Basically, I'm paid to ask questions as a coach. And some of the questions on this point that I would challenge even our audience today, and myself and yourself, Mr. Radido, is to ask ourselves, what kind of a leader do I want to be? What kind of a leader do I want to be? And what do I want to be remembered for? As a leader, am I putting my gifts and my talents and my passions to good use as I serve my company or as I serve my clients? And for the organization, you can ask yourself, what impact will our company be known for and remembered for? How will we be remembered as an organization? Yeah. And I'd go to the second point. So the first C is clarity, and the second C, which ties very closely to clarity, is communication. We must weave this communication of purpose into all our conversations. What kind of communication are we giving off as leaders? Yeah, I don't like using this statement, but I'll just use it for the sake of this conversation. That statement of monkey see, monkey do. And the reason I'm referencing to it is because employees emulate what their leaders do. And as leaders who are leading with purpose, there's no way we can metaphorically be drinking wine and preaching water. We're preaching water and we're drinking wine. Whatever we as leaders are communicating is what our employees or our teams will communicate. Yeah. And so I always encourage, for organizations that I work with, I encourage them, you need to come up with a purpose statement. Make it crisp, make it simple, make it understandable. It doesn't have to be a complicated story. Yeah. But basically a purpose statement is saying, why do we exist as an organization? Yeah. And encourage my clients, to avoid generic or abstract statements. So sometimes people just do it for the sake of doing it, But it has to be a statement that inspires you as a leader, and it must also inspire your team, yeah, and the people that you're leading. And so one of the ways to even weave the messaging of communication is by including team members, include teams, even from different leadership levels, yeah, and have people come on board from different departments and generate the statement together. There has to be buy-in, there has to be input from the employees. I think sometimes authoritarian kind of leadership, rather, it does have its place, but the truth is, I don't think it's always as productive as sometimes we may make it look. People want also a democratic organization where you can feel that you're part of the bigger picture. Yeah, you can feel that your voice is heard. It's not just a boss coming to back orders. It is a boss saying, "Come, let's sit at the table. Let's figure out what are we about as an organization. What kind of communication are we giving off? What are we communicating as an organization when we are dealing with our clients, when we are dealing with our community, when we are even dealing with one another?" Yeah. And so we must figure out as organizations and even as individuals, because at the end of the day, Mr. Radito, you and I are individual brands. You work for Zion Paul. I run my company, Posh Solutions. But at the end of the day, I am an individual brand, and whatever I, as a leader of Posh Solutions, am communicating is what people will pick up from Posh Solutions. And so we must be able to, for us to be able to work effectively, for us to be able to accomplish the purpose of organizations, we must have a very consistent message. It must be clear, it must be compelling. We must be compelled as leaders to be showing up in our fullest selves every day, because we understand what we are aiming to achieve. Yeah. And the other thing I would want to add before I move on from that point is, besides just communication, our actions must be very consistent with that messaging. Yeah. So we are not just coming up with communication that says A, B, C, D, but our actions must now be in alignment with what we are saying. So if as an organization we are keen, let's say it's a non-profit, and you are keen about just serving needy families in our neighborhood, for instance, it's not just communicating that on our website. That must be exactly what we do every day when we come into the office. Yeah. So our actions must always match with the message. Yeah. And so one of the questions I challenge ourselves and our audience is asking ourselves, what is my message to the world? There is an activity I usually do with my clients called a vision mapping, and we look at different components of how to map our life vision. And one of the questions I always ask my clients is, if you were given an opportunity to just speak one sentence to somebody, a sentence that would leave a significance in their lives, what would you say? What would your message be in that moment? You have this one moment to just share one sentence to somebody, what would you be telling them? So it's good to ask ourselves, what is my message to the world? What is our message as a company to the world or to the community that we are working in? And our actions, are our actions consistent with the messaging? Yeah. So those are good questions to reflect. Going to the third C, Mr. Radido, as I begin to wind down, the third C is collaboration. Yeah. So we've looked at clarity, we've looked at communication, and then now we talk about collaboration. And each of these points feeds into the other. Yeah. So it sort of cascades into one another. And when I talk about collaboration, we're talking about collaborating with every stakeholder that is involved in your purpose assignment or in your purpose mission as a leader and as an organization. And collaboration works both horizontally and vertically. It involves collaborating with fellow leaders if you are top management or mid-level management. It also involves collaborating with fellow employees, team members, clients, and even the community in which you work with. All of these people are stakeholders. They are stakeholders in your purpose assignment. And so leading with purpose involves treating everyone as your customer. Leading with purpose I want to repeat that, Mr. Radido. Leading with purpose as a leader. If you're leading with purpose, this means treating everyone as your customer. And this doesn't just touch on your customers alone, the people who are buying your product or getting your service. It also means your employees or your fellow team members. Treating them as your customer, because ultimately you're still serving their needs in one way or the other. As a leader, for instance, if you're running your own company, you are putting food on the table of these people. In a way, you are serving your employees. So leading with purpose involves treating everyone as your customer. And a purpose-driven leader, Mr. Radido, understand they cannot accomplish on their own. They need to partner with others. There's nobody. I'll be very honest. If there's a statement, and I was having this discussion with a friend of mine, I think just yesterday, and if there's a statement I genuinely dislike as a leader, is that statement of I am self-made. I hate that statement with everything in me. Why? Because there is nobody, Mr. Radido, that is self-made.
Yeah.
Absolutely nobody. Every person has been helped in one way or the other by somebody along their lives. Number one, God. Number two, a parent or parents. Number three, could have been a teacher who encouraged you. Number four, it could have even been an employee who helped you put the vision of your organization together. They served that vision. It could have been an investor. It could have been somebody, even just a mentor or a coach. Nobody is self-made. And the leaders who lead with purpose understand this. They understand that I cannot do this thing on my own. I need to collaborate with other people, So you join hands with other people, because then the ripple effect is even much bigger and more impactful. And delegation is a part of collaboration. I'll be very honest, in my past life, I was not a very good delegator because of what I would call the perfectionist syndrome. I do have a bit of OCD, and so I remember anytime I would even give team members work, I always used to want to almost redo it because I didn't believe anybody could do it as well as I could. And that's such a bad way of leading people, because at the end of the day, people have how would I put this? People have different levels of creativity and even different angles of creativity. And when we are leading with purpose, when we are leading our teams, we need to understand that we must engage our teams and even allow them to come up with solutions, to generate solutions from their own perspective. And we can work together to accomplish what it is that we want to accomplish as an organization. So one of the questions I would challenge ourselves today is asking ourselves, who am I called to collaborate with? Am I a good collaborator? Am I collaborating as best as I should, or as best as I know I can? Who is our organization collaborating with? Every organization has partners. We usually see on websites, people you've partnered with. Even your clients are your partners because you are buying your product. Yeah. But Mr. Radito, you're running Zion for publishers. You need the authors. Those are your collaborators.
Yes.
Yeah. Because then you wouldn't be a publishing company if you're not publishing anybody's book or anybody's article, So we need to learn that collaboration is one of the ways we lead. We are able to lead with purpose. And it also increases that sense of ownership and trust. Once again, it's not about a leader coming to just back down orders from top to bottom. It's about a leader inviting people into that space and saying, guys, this is what I'm thinking. What are your thoughts? Let's hear from everybody. And you go from the lowest to the highest. And so lastly, maybe let me just give an example, because this point on collaborating was so special to me. And when I was just thinking about it, I thought of, as a believer, I would say, our greatest role model, who is Jesus. He was the greatest leader that ever lived on the face of this earth. And he collaborated with 12 people. And these 12 people, one will put Judas aside, these other 11 people, by virtue of what they were taught and what Jesus imparted to them, today the gospel is all over the world.
Yes.
So Jesus is God. He could have come and done it on his own. But he decided to collaborate with people. God collaborates with human beings. He didn't need to, but he does.
Yes.
At the end of the day, to advance his agenda. And so lastly, we'll talk about connecting. So there's clarity, there's communication, there's collaboration, and lastly, connecting. And for us to be able to lead with purpose, we must be able to help our teams to connect with the company's purpose and to find meaning in their work. There's nothing as bad as people who go to an organization or an office and they're just miserable. It's not the best feeling, if I could put it that way. Yeah? And so as a leader leading with purpose, you want to be able to help your employees to connect with the team purpose, to connect with the purpose of the organization, because then they're able to find the meaning. They're able to understand that today I worked, I've come back home, I'm exhausted, but I added value to the world. I offered something to make the world a better place than I found it. And winning leaders understand this. Leaders leading with purpose, they understand this. They understand the need of helping employees or teams connect, with that team spirit. And so you want your employees to be inspired. For instance, if you're a leader running an organization, you want your people to be inspired, to add value, and you also want for them to be able to find ways that they can connect their own personal purpose with the purpose of the organization. Yeah, that you want your teams to be able to utilize their gifts to the maximum capacity.
Yes.
And this doesn't necessarily mean that if, for instance, I'm gifted in singing, that now I must be employed in a music company. I could be maybe an administrator in an organization, but then it would be, how can I use my voice to add value, and it could be, as an organization, maybe hosting karaoke nights as an organization, or it could even be going into the community and singing to kids, maybe in a children's home. There is a way we can always converge our own individual purpose with that of the organization that we are leading. Yeah. So one of the questions would be, how can I connect my purpose with the purpose of the organization, or with the corporate purpose, or how can I empower my team or my teams to connect with the higher purpose that this organization is seeking to achieve or serve. So in a nutshell, Mr. Adido, that is what I would have to share. There's so much more to share about leading with purpose, but I do understand that we are also time bound. And so just to wrap it up once again, in case our audience is also taking notes, it's very important for us to lead with purpose. Why? Because it aligns our goals and our objectives. Number 2, it sharpens our focus. Number 3, it keeps us resilient and adaptable. And number 4, it powers performance. Yeah. And how can we lead with purpose? The 4 C's. Number 1, clarity. Number 2, communication. Number 3, collaboration. And number 4, connecting or connection. So thank you so much, Mr. Ratido. I'll hand over the mic back to you.
Wow, thank you so much, Joan. quite insightful, quite deep. I've been writing some notes here, and I really love it. I love it that you have spent quite some time to really expound on the purpose of purpose. That's a very important thing. Sometimes we fail to understand this thing. When you talk about vision and purpose, a lot of times people are not able to connect that because there is no picture that has been painted that people can see. Okay, that is purpose. A lot of times it sounds a little spiritual, sometimes mystical or far-fetched, so many people do not know. If you talk about a car, many people would understand what you're saying. When you talk about purpose, many people really struggle with that, because it's a conversation that a lot of people do not really get to understand. But I like it that you have discussed the purpose of purpose. So the first question I'm going to ask you, which I was hoping that you will touch on, but now you can answer it, is at a foundational stage, what is your understanding of the purpose of leadership? What is the purpose of leadership? Whoever came up with the concept of leadership, what was in their mind in terms of this would be the purpose of leadership?
Thank you, Mr. Radido. From my own perspective, I believe that the purpose of leadership is to influence people or inspire people to accomplish a specific goal, or I don't want to use the word purpose, but to accomplish a specific goal or set of objectives.
Yes.
Yeah. In a nutshell, we lead in order to inspire others towards accomplishing a specific goal or goals or a specific set of objectives. That's how I would put it. Yeah, because leadership is about influence. Yeah. Besides influencing ourselves, we are leading other people to influence them towards accomplishing A, B, C, D. There is a common goal that all of us are aiming to accomplish, you know? And that is different for every organization or every individual, every company. But at the end of the day, it is about inspiring people or influencing them to work towards accomplishing this specific set of goals or objectives. Yeah.
Earlier on, you said you talked about this phenomenon, the New Year phenomenon, and 2 weeks or 3 weeks later. I love the fact that you're now even putting timelines on it. I knew it. I have always known that thing does not work for so many people, but I've never had an opportunity to attach timelines to it. So I'm going to update my files, so that next time I'm talking about that, I quote what you've just said, that actually it's within 2 to 3 weeks, everybody falls back to their routine of either mediocrity or I think a lot of times mediocrity. Excellent people have something that is driving them, and they have something that's keeping them in that direction.
Very, very.
Purpose is very elusive and very uncomfortable for so many people to even talk about, because a lot of this is internal. It's like looking inwards, especially if you bring it at a personal level. What do you have to say about the fact that many people get it wrong because they have not defined it or identified it at a foundational level, so that many people who are purposeless, they're purposeless because either they do not have a purpose, or they do not have an understanding of it, or they are just not able to grasp it?
So I'll just mention that, number one, Mr. Radido, everybody does have purpose. The challenge is in the understanding of it. Sometimes it's also in the comparison of it between ourselves and other people.
Yes.
As I mentioned earlier, there are people truly who are blessed enough to have understood from a very young age. Sometimes you hear motivational speakers, or people in different spheres of influencing. I knew since I was young, I knew this and this and this, and so sometimes when somebody is on their journey and they're not understanding, it can be a bit frustrating. And I'll be honest, the reason why I'm very passionate about purpose and leadership is because I was one of those people. When I was growing up, I wanted to be everything and everybody. I wanted to be an air hostess, I wanted to be this, I wanted to be that. And the challenge is that many people tend also to confuse between their purpose and their career. And our journey of discovering purpose is not, for those who maybe did not get it at a young age, is understanding that it's a journey of discovery. It's not something that you just stumble upon overnight and discover, okay, now I've discovered, now I'm good to go. And I always tell my clients that purpose always evolves. Yeah. Allow me to give an analogy once again. Allow me, Mr. Radido, I'm born again, so allow me to use scriptural references, if that's okay. When I look at the life of Christ, Jesus ultimately came, his overarching purpose was to come and die for the world. But the truth is, every day that he lived on the face of this earth, he was accomplishing purpose. Every person that he healed, healing was part of his ultimate purpose. Every person that he touched, every person that he showed compassion to, it was feeding into this overarching purpose. But many times people have the challenge of thinking, I must discover this one big thing overnight. And now because I've not discovered it, I'm getting frustrated, I'm this, I'm that. And I always tell my clients, give yourself a chance to even be comfortable in the unknown.
Yes.
It doesn't mean being passive, but it means actively walking that journey of discovery. And there are certain things you could do to discover purpose. One of the things I usually encourage my clients, because many times people think it has to be a light bulb moment, and for some people it is, but not for everybody. Sometimes, Mr. Radido, it is taking a pen and paper, blank pen and paper, and writing down, what would I want to be remembered for? Thinking about it, if I was to die, what would I want somebody to say on my deathbed or at my funeral? What would my legacy statement be? And sometimes when we start having such conversations with ourselves, when we begin looking, the Bible says, ask and you shall receive, seek and you shall find, knock and the door will be open unto you. When we begin to actively engage with ourselves, with our environment, then you start finding these pieces of the puzzle are coming together. So for people, Mr. Radido, that you clarified earlier as purposeless, which are not really purposeless in that sense, it's because sometimes people don't either understand the importance of it, or simply they assume what they're doing, or maybe their career is their purpose. And the two are very different. Your career could be part of feeding into your purpose, but ultimately, our purpose is about our offering to the world, the difference we want to make in the world. And so our careers could be part of that journey. I hope I've touched on what you had asked.
Definitely. So, the next thing that comes to my mind is coming from the statement you've said that purpose is discoverable, or it is to be discovered. Before we began this conversation, I just began to look at the origin of things, and like you have said in most of what you have talked about, most of us come into the world with a purpose for which we were created, and the story of purpose begins in the mind of the originator. Like, for example, in our case, God is the originator of ourselves. So he imagined a purpose, and he said, I'm fashioning this person in a particular way so they can be able to go and fulfill their purpose, and then he lets you be. So that part of our journey of purpose is to discover what that purpose really is. Now, when it comes to leadership, I know there are certain privileges, if I may use that word, that leaders have. One of which is creating. One of the functions of leadership, in my opinion, is to create things. You are either creating a plan or an idea or a solution or a mission, or you even fashion things. It is leaders who fashion things, who create. Leaders create objects, and they create environments, and they create movements and events and conversations, and they would know the purpose of those things. So that now, speaking as a leader and speaking to leaders, I want you I want to hear your thoughts about the role of leadership in crafting purpose, so that when you enter into an organization, for example, the organization that you're leading right now, it has a purpose that was fashioned either from you, by you, or through your influence. So when somebody enters into that organization and the question is raised, what is the purpose of this organization? You are most likely going to give it a thorough answer, because you created that environment, you created the solution, you fashioned the strategies, and are in charge of directing things in there. So what is your comment about the role of leadership in creating and clarifying purpose, so that in the journey of discovering, leaders have a role to play in terms of making the plan clear? I like what the Bible says, that write the vision down and make it plain. Make it plain. That is is a statement of clarifying something. So what's your thought about that?
Thank you, Mr. Radido. Leadership plays a big role in the journey of discovery of purpose. I look at it from like a corporate context. For instance, let's imagine an organization has been founded by this founder. Ultimately, why did somebody start this organization? They must have had a purpose in mind.
Yes.
Yeah. But as a leader, you do understand, I will need people. I cannot do this thing on my own. Yeah. And so leaders, with your leadership ability, or with the leadership capacity to influence, yeah, a leader plays a big role in the accomplishing of purpose by influencing and inspiring the people around them to go after this common goal, to go after this why. And I know you know Simon Sinek, who always is famous for his golden circle model, which encourages organizations and individuals start with the why.
Yes.
That for organizations to be effective and inspiring and even to be sustainable, when organizations start with the why, ultimately it feeds into the how and it feeds into the what. So that right there is the leader is like the nucleus, if I could put it that way, the nucleus of that whole model. The nucleus right at the center, because the leader is the one who's going to come. Yes, the leader has a vision. Yeah. Yes, the leader understands. Maybe they could have come in with the understanding of what they have started the organization to do. But ultimately, their work is to influence and inspire these people around them, the collaborators, to come, and together we can put this vision together and run with it. Yes. Again, I will use the analogy of Jesus. Jesus understood his purpose when he came to the face of the earth. But he understood, I cannot accomplish my purpose on my own. I will need to also impart to these 12 people who will continue with the work even after I am gone. You know? And that is really the role of the leader. At the end of the day, Mr. Radido, an organization should never die simply because a leader passes on. That would be such an error. In fact, in such a case, that leader has failed. If a leader is unable to impart and inspire and influence people to continue with the work even after he leaves, then that right there is a poor leader. Because ultimately, as a leader, you are there to grow other leaders. You are there to catalyze the purpose to be put into action. You know, and so I would say that would be the role of a leader in creating or cultivating purpose. It is ultimately to influence, to inspire, to collaborate with other people, to continue, even post their own humanity, if I could put it that way.
Wow, thank you so very much. There is this aspect of devolving purpose. I'm using that word, but I'm going to explain where it is being broken down from the top level, and it comes to the ground level where the front line happens to be, and implementation, execution happens. So that sometimes that which is called purpose, sometimes which may not be easy for everybody to grasp, when it is broken down into goals and targets and milestones, it begins to make a lot more sense. Because if you look at how all these things weave, if you follow how the daily actions or the daily programs that we run on a daily basis, how they weave together to eventually, build towards purpose, then you realize that it is not just a target, it's not just a goal. It is a building block that when weaved together with other building blocks, eventually they construct this whole story of purpose. I know you have been a leader before, and I don't know what your experience was. What do you advise? What do you advise when it comes to devolving or breaking this whole big purpose thing into something that people can actually say, okay, I understand this, I connect with this, I know how to plug into this and be productive around this area?
I like that. That's a good question. That's a good one, Mr. Radito. I like the word you even used, devolving. You know, in my coaching world, I would say chunking it down.
Yes.
You know, and what do I mean by this? It becomes like you begin. I think I'm trying to remember this. I think it's a proverb that you eat. How do they say? You eat an elephant one chunk at a time, something like that.
Yes.
It's a funny proverb, I think. But what I mean is that at the end of the day, as a leader, it's not just about you knowing this information and just keeping it maybe at your level or at just top management. At the end of the day, it should be able to flow down and it should be able to flow up. You see, at the end of the day, it's not just a one-way route. It has to be two-way, because at the bottom of, if we could put it this, at the bottom of the pyramid, the people at the bottom also want to be able to give their insight to top management. And unfortunately, many organizations struggle with that because it becomes about the boss has said, the leader has said. And we get to a place where employees just become like puppets because they are not being heard by anybody. Mr. Radito, when you have the vision, let me give an example of your organization, Zion Power. You as a leader of Zion Power, top management, you have ideas for where you want Zion Power to go, isn't it?
That's right.
And you have employees or teams working under you. As a leader, it's not just about you sharing the vision, cascading it down. It's also about you listening to what people at that level have to say. You know, and I think I touched on this in my chapter of the book, in our volume 4 edition. That I think it's a Japanese philosophy. I don't know whether is it Kaizen or which one. That it just talks about continuous improvement of the organization.
Yes.
But this continuous improvement of organization just doesn't happen at top management. It happens it's like a cycle that keeps feeding into each other. So it moves from the top all the way down, all the way to the top, like that. It's like a cycle, you know? And so the work of a leader is, at the end of the day, you have the vision, you understand why you founded the organization, you cascade it, but then it is also up to you to receive feedback. What are people saying at the ground? You know, you see the way Kenyans love saying situation qua ground is
different, yes.
Because people are seated in boardrooms and they come up with policies, they come up with philosophies, they come up with ideas that have not even been tried and tested at the ground level. And that is a problem in leadership, Mr. Radito. So at the end of the day, leaders need to be able to chunk it down all the way to the bottom and also accept feedback from that bottom place to the top. And it doesn't necessarily mean implementing everything that has been said, but remember that the people who are working and interacting, for instance, with the clients, it's one-on-one, so they understand better than somebody who is just seated behind a desk backing out orders to people, you know. So that would be my take on your question.
That is quite deep. Then there is this other phenomenon where you talked about purpose keeps evolving. I want to go into the depths of that. I don't know what exactly you mean by that, but we live in a space where there is this thing I call the primary purpose. The primary purpose is the original intent, the original reason why something was made. And then there is this secondary purpose that comes up either because of emerging situation or changing contexts or just opportunities that flash before your eyes, and then you begin to find yourself moving in other directions. The market has its forces, and I'm going to talk about organizations in this case. Sometimes we want to move with the original intent or the original purpose for setting up an organization, but then you find yourself in a market space that is constantly bombarded by forces of demand and supply and competition and all these other disruptions that are happening all over the place. A good example is what happened when COVID happened. When COVID happened, there are certain organizations that started providing certain services and certain things that are not originally in the structure of the organization. They were not part of the crafting of the original organization. But then, because a situation has happened, opportunities have opened up, or disruption is here, or there is this change of marketplace dynamics, now they are beginning to serve other purposes, which is what I call secondary purpose. Now, I want to hear your thought about staying true to purpose and balancing between the primary purpose, the secondary purpose, tertiary purpose, or these other things that may come as purpose, either to individuals or organizations, and how to navigate the whole of that space,
Okay. As I said earlier, Mr. Radido, there is, I love how you put it, there's a primary purpose, and then there is this what we would term a secondary purpose. Yeah. The reason I said a purpose evolves is because I believe firmly that purpose is not static. Purpose is dynamic in nature. And the reason I say this is because it's easy as individuals to just, and tunnel vision is a good thing, yeah? But it's easy to just look at things in this one way. And so when things begin to shift, as you said, market forces, COVID happened, economic recession, these things are happening around us. And if you're unable to recalibrate, or if you're unable to pivot, then it's possible for us to not really accomplish what it is that we want to accomplish. Remember, Mr. Radido, the foundation of purpose is service.
Yes.
And this service may look different in different seasons of life.
Yes.
Both for you as an individual and for the organization. And sometimes the truth is an organization may have started with their purpose being A, B, C, D, and market forces happen or pandemics happen. And they might need to pivot and, go back to the drawing board and say, okay, guys, we still want to serve our community. How best are we able to do this? Things have changed. How are we able to change with the times and the seasons we are in? Instead of shutting our doors, what are we able to do differently? How are we able to remain resilient? How are we able to adapt? And so we must be willing to move even with that dynamo, if I could put it that way. We must be willing to shift perspectives if need be, to not just look at this one thing and say, now me, it is this one thing that I only know. No. How are you able to do things differently? This is no longer required in the marketplace. So does that mean we close our doors? Not necessarily. We still want to service we still want to serve our communities. What other need is there? The season is this and this and this. How best are we able to serve? At the end of the day, Mr. Radido, organizations and individuals are here to serve. We are here to serve people. We are here ultimately to serve the purpose of God. And that service may look different at different times of life. Again, I'll use the analogy of Jesus. When he was on the face of this earth, he healed, he had compassion, he preached the gospel, he did many things. But when the season shifted, he had to die. And when the season shifted, he resurrected. And the season shifted and he moved back into glory. Does that mean the work stopped? It didn't. It was just service in different seasons and in different ways. But ultimately, he fulfilled the purpose of God. And I look at it that way for our own us as individuals, and even for the organizations that we are running.
Wow, thank you so very much for talking about that. You remind me of when you talk about alignment, you remind me of a quote by the late Dr. Miles Monroe: when the purpose of a thing is not known, abuse is imminent. Now let's talk about alignment. Let's talk about alignment, because alignment is a big thing. Many people get frustrated in their places of work, either because they do not know their purpose, or their purpose does not align with the purpose of the organization. And you talked about that earlier on. And some organizations are really struggling because they are trying to be everything to everybody by the model of copying and pasting, and which is a very common phenomenon these days. Everybody wants to do what everybody is doing, and that frustrates purpose. I want you to speak to the issue of alignment. How important is this, and how can how can people align with their purpose, and how can they align with the purpose of the organizations that they're trying to work with, and how can organizations align with the purpose so that they don't get frustrated, they don't waste, they don't abuse themselves, because there are so many organizations that are basically abusing themselves in the name of let's try what everybody is trying, or let's venture into this space because we think that's where the money is. And as you talk about that, talk about purpose and money, because sometimes purpose leads in the direction where there is no money.
That's a good one. Let me start with the first one.
Yes.
The truth is, as a coach, as a mentor, I've met and interacted with people who are really frustrated in their jobs. And in fact, not just frustrated, but really hate their jobs, you know. And I think it's a bad state to be in, because then you're not at your 100, if I can put it that way.
Yes.
You know, you're not expending yourself. You find employees who are just there in body, but their mind is very far away.
Yes.
It's a sad phenomenon. And at the end of the day, somebody will say, I have to stay in the job.
Yes.
And I do understand that 100%. I think we were together in that forum that I was speaking at CITAM, and I think somebody from the audience asked about, quitting their job. I never advocate for it, because it is something that I did, and I did it without a good plan, and it was just not the easiest path to take. It is a path of it's not a path of least resistance. It had a lot of resistance, even from my own internal self. So it is not something that I do advocate for people to do. I would start with this. Number one, it's important if, for instance, part of our audience is listening and maybe somebody's feeling stuck in a job that they don't like. It could be maybe you haven't understood what your own purpose is, or what is it that you're passionate about.
Yes.
Because also a lack of awareness or a lack of clarity can bring or feed into that kind of a frustration.
Yes.
Understand yourself. If you need to even do an assessment, there are a lot of personality assessments online. You could work with a coach. You could work with a mentor. Get to understand what it is that you are really passionate about. What is it that you want? What is the value that you want to add to people's lives, So I think that is the first step.
Yes.
Number two, I would encourage a person in such a situation to then, once you understand what you're passionate about, or what it is that you want to add into the world, what your offering is to the world, then begin to match that with what you're doing. So in the event that maybe you're in a company where you feel that you're your purpose or your passion is not really being activated or put to good use. Figure out how you're able to put it to good use. It could be in another space. And by this, I would mean, for instance, somebody's working maybe in an organization as an administrator, and you feel that, your calling or your passion is really in the IT sector. It could be, number one, having courage to approach your boss or your leader and saying, you know what, having a solid, sober conversation with them. This is what I'm feeling. I feel that I could better utilize my gifts or my talents or my competencies in this other department. Is it possible for me to be working there even once a week to test the ground? I do believe that sometimes having conversations can lead to so much breakthrough if people just could have those conversations. In the event maybe you're working in an environment where that can be a bit challenging, because activating or engaging your purpose is very meaningful and it can give you satisfaction even in your own personal life. I encourage clients, find an opportunity to channel or serve in your community. That could mean on weekends, you could decide to volunteer somewhere else, or you could decide to engage a friend maybe who is starting their business and saying, you know what, I'm good at this, or I feel that this is an area of calling in my life. Is it possible that I serve your organization in this capacity, even just for 4 hours every Saturday? Find ways of connecting the two. Both this part of your career maybe that you feel, and this part of you that you feel, this is my calling. If you're able to serve in the organization that you're in, getting an opportunity, maybe you're working in a healthy environment and you're able to be given a chance to transfer into another department, good for you. And the truth is, sometimes as leaders, you would just want to place somebody in an organization for the sake of doing it. But then, Mr. Redito, going back to what you had spoken earlier, having conversations and cascading information from the bottom to the top. When a leader has shared the purpose of the organization, it is much easier for an employee to approach that leader and say, Mr. So-and-so or Mrs. So-and-so, from what you shared, I feel that I'm in the wrong department. I feel I'm able to add more value to the purpose of company A because I'm gifted in A, B, C, D. Would you be willing to give me that chance, to express my giftings in this other department? So having those conversations would be easier. It is better to ask and be told no than to have never asked in the first place. Yeah. So I hope that has added on to, has brought a bit of clarity. Talking about money, Mr. Radito, that one, to be honest, this is what I would say. Purpose and money do not necessarily have to be at loggerheads.
Yes.
You could have your career that is giving you money and still express your purpose in your own space or in the place where you're serving. The challenge sometimes can be when we decide we are quitting our jobs to pursue our purpose. I always encourage people, by the time you're making such a decision, you need to have factored in a couple of things. Where am I going to live in the event maybe you are in a rented space? Do you have maybe resources? Because, Mr. Radito, just because God has called us into purpose does not necessarily mean, in fact, let me rephrase that. Because God has called us into purpose, He has also given us the wisdom to serve that purpose, So it will be irresponsible, unless led by God categorically. It would be irresponsible for somebody to just leave their job to go and pursue purpose, especially if you really don't have a solid plan in place. Yeah? So just because you're pursuing purpose doesn't necessarily mean that you will be broke. I'll give an example with my own life. Mr. Radito, I'm a coach and I'm a mentor. I do believe each of these things feeds into my ultimate purpose of serving the world through my gifts.
Yes.
But I'm also paid for it. But the truth is, for me to have gotten here, I also went through many days of not being paid. Was it easy? It wasn't.
Yes.
Did I question? Yes, I
did. Yes.
And so it has to be a gamble. Mr. Radido, life is about taking risks. And sometimes we take risks, we can fail, but we learn from that failure. Yes. Sometimes it can work. But what I would encourage a client, if a client was to ask me, Joanna, I want to pursue my purpose, but I'm not so sure it will pay me, I will encourage them, what are you currently doing? I'm doing job A. I will tell them, first, hang on to job A. If it's not like a miserable job or a job that is depleting you, you can be doing job A, then we find a place or a community or an organization through which you can express your purpose in community B or organization B, so that the two go hand in hand. So that by the time also somebody decides I'm quitting my job, then this has also been something you've been working at and something also that could bring you profit. It is not always that your area of purpose will bring you profit, but I do believe it can contribute effectively to you making even more money. Because people who are working in their purpose, Mr. Radito, first of all, have a higher level of self-awareness. Number two, they also have a higher level of satisfaction in life. Being in such a high emotional state, it helps you even become more creative in how you can make money or do business or, earn more income or even earn higher incomes, because it will increase your output and your productivity. Yeah.
Wow, that is so good. That is so good. Maybe I can just add a point onto what you have talked about in terms of aligning. I also think it is prudent for people to take time and study, either to discover their purpose or to know how people navigate in the industry of their purpose, so that if you have been called in a particular direction, you are not just clueless about what needs to be done, how people operate there, how people pitch, or how people navigate spaces. And I think a lot of people are perishing for lack of knowledge.
Very true.
People don't take time to know, I am a coach, all right. What do coaches do? Where do they meet? What skills am I required to do? What mindset do I wear? How long does it take? What are the areas of coaching that I should be deploying myself around? So that a lot of people begin life by grappling. The way we start life as children, and I don't like the idea of the fact that we were created to start life as children. Sometimes I imagine life would be better if we were born adults with master's degrees and PhDs. So you start from a point of intelligence.
Right.
But a lot of us, just like we start life as babies, infants, completely vulnerable and depending on other people to support us. That is how we show up in many spaces for the first time. You don't know this, you don't know that, you don't know how to knock at this door, you don't know what to do. So that it needs some time of continuous exposure or repeated exposure for you to build some kind of intelligence, so that you can begin to master how to walk, how to run, how to do this and that, and then it keeps going on and on like that. So that taking time to study and build knowledge or build understanding, which is what I prefer, build understanding about your area of purpose. That's very important. And then the second point which I want to add there is be willing and ready to do the work, because purpose is labor, it's work. People break the sweat there. Sometimes you injure yourself. Sometimes you have to work long, you have to work hard. What somebody like you is enjoying right now and looking glamorous is a product of 8 years or more of just trying this and that, going for volunteer work. And I like that you're talking about volunteer work, offering services and building your muscles to the place where now you have built the necessary intelligence to run a life as a coach that can serve organizations and can serve individuals without you doubting what you are saying, or without you even wondering what kind of results will come out, because now you have tested it. You know that if I touch this button, it is this kind of results that will come out.
Right.
A lot of people talk about purpose, but they don't work purpose. They just talk.
It's true.
And
it's just talk and never action, because at the end of the day,
yeah,
you can have a purpose statement, and we are, we can be very good at crafting purpose statements, mission statements, vision statements, but at the end of the day, your actions are really what speak louder than what you're saying. Your actions at the end of the day are what deliver results.
Yeah.
And God created us. I like something I had someone mention at our Bible study, and she said, God created man. Before God created man, God created the environment for the man to work in. And after creating the man, God put the man there and said, get to work,
Yeah.
And, at times, as we are saying, sometimes we've given work such a negative rap, We look at work like this burdensome thing. And yes, it could be part of the effect of the fall of man, but the original intention of work from God was to also give meaning to our lives. Let me tell you, Mr. Radido, when you interact with people who are not working, somebody who just stays at home, maybe they have tarmacked, they are looking for work and they can't find work, it can be one of the most frustrating and from doing work. So God created the area of the work, then he put the man there and said, get to work. And I remember one of the ladies commenting and saying, this one is just, we are off tangent a little bit, and she said, after God gave the man a job, and now then God decided, then I'll give you the wife. So she was saying there is an order to the things and how things should be done, but that's just a side note. So I just wanted to add on to that at the end of the day, it's a work. It's us putting these things that we're talking about, these intentions, to action, and that way we are able to deliver results, we're able to serve our communities. And I also love what you mentioned earlier about just taking, sort of like taking a litmus test. I'm passionate about ABCD. I feel this is my area of purpose or my area of calling. Let me volunteer somewhere. Let me interact with people in that space. Let me put myself in that space to know how people in that space are operating. What are the dynamics in the market? So that then, as you quoted that scripture, my people perish for lack of knowledge, because many times, people just take what we would call a trustful or a faithful. And I'm a person who believes in taking risks, but calculated risks. We have to take calculated risks, even as leaders leading in the marketplace and people also seeking to discover their purpose. So thank you for just adding that, Mr. Radito.
Yeah, that's powerful. Thank you so much also for that. I don't like the way time is flying out quite fast. When the discussion is now beginning to be juicy and now time is beginning to squeeze on us. I don't know what we are going to do here, but I can see one of my clients here called Morgan. Morgan, I saw your hand up. Did you want to say something? You want to contribute to the conversation or ask a question? I'll be glad to let you in. So if that is the case, just click that button again, the one that says you're raising your hand, so I can allow you to join in and ask your question or make your comment. Before I ask the next question, because I want us to pull down the curtains on this discussion today, I also wanted to add something onto what we are just saying. I think it is intelligent to start early. If you know purpose, I mean, once you get clarity about your area of purpose, begin early, because we show up at life very naive. It doesn't matter where you start. Start a business, you'll find yourself so naive in it. Start school, you realize that you have to be taught the alphabetical order first. Start a marriage, you realize that, hey, you have to start from scratch. You know absolutely nothing. I mean, just start anything. You realize that we enter the podium of life with naivety, so that if you start early, you give yourself the advantage of time, where you can be able to slowly learn, make mistakes, discover some few things, so that those who start early, usually they have another level of intelligence that is not found among those who start late, because starting late is characterized by you feel like you're getting frustrated. You feel like it's like you have become plastic. Even your thinking is plastic. Even your way of understanding things is plastic. So you tend to struggle more, and of course you make bigger mistakes than how you would do it if you started early when you're still young, because again, starting early is associated with being young, yeah. So it's intelligent to start early and learn those lessons early, or make those mistakes early, because even those mistakes sometimes are a way of revealing to you the things that you need to know, you need to learn, so that after a while, usually between 5 and 10 years, somebody has built sufficient intelligence, especially if they were serious about what they were doing, sufficient intelligence to make them a leader or an authority in a particular area, so that when you are beginning to tell people that I'm now doing purpose, you are speaking from the position of leadership. You have mastered the knowledge, you have mastered the understanding, you've mastered the systems, you know the dynamics, you know how to plug that into the market forces or the needs of the community, or the global demand of what you call your purpose, so that when you touch one button, you produce results in a way that can impact a large scale of the target audience that you're working with.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what I needed to add there. I don't know if you have a comment about it before I ask the last question.
I actually just I loved something you said about the element of starting early, and it made me think just of the reason why I'm passionate about coaching. I'm not just coaching, but mentorship, especially of young people. I love mentoring young people, especially students at high school level, and I always tell them, you are blessed enough to be starting to know and learn these things at an early age.
Yes.
Yeah. And you have the advantage of learning from others, making people who have made the mistakes. I think there was a quote by this German, I think it was a German chancellor, Otto von Bismarck, and he said, only a fool wants to learn from experience. A wise man learns from the mistakes of others.
Yes.
And I always tell them, you have the advantage of learning from the mistakes I have made as your mentor. You have the advantage of learning these things at an early age when your brains are forming. So you have the capacity to grow your self-awareness. So you are not waiting to reach, a certain age where, you start now panicking. As you said, Mr. Radito, many times, people get frustrated because now they start feeling like they were left behind by the bus. But when you start early, cultivating your self-awareness, beginning to understand what is it that I like, what is it that I don't like, what difference do I want to make in the world, when you start asking yourself intelligent questions at a young age, for those ones who have the advantage of youth, then you're better positioned to go through life in a more effective manner and in a way that serves your highest purposes and the highest purposes of God. So yeah, that's what I just wanted to add.
That is quite deep. Thank you so very much for that addition. Now, I'm going to ask you one last question because you have 3 minutes to go.
Yes.
We know a lot of leadership is either parented or schooled. And when I talk about school, I'm talking about the training that fashions leadership into people. And I am a believer of the fact that whether or not you have natural leadership predispositions, you have to be trained for you to be effective in that leadership. Whether you claim to be self-made, and I like the fact that you talked about the truth that nobody is self-made. There are certain things you find in life that were created by people that you are taking advantage of, and therefore they are making you in a way. I wanted to speak to the whole idea of parenting for purpose and schooling for purpose. And when you talk about schooling, don't limit it to primary level or secondary level. Talk about schooling as a way of training. I know you're a coach, and I know you do a bit of training or helping people to fashion themselves in particular directions. What is the importance, or what is the role of parenting or schooling in producing leaders that are purpose-led leaders, or leaders that can exercise leadership in a purposeful way.
Okay, I like that, and I'll just touch on what I've just said a few seconds ago. The role that parents and teachers would play in a context where they're introducing kids to the conversation about purpose is one main thing: self-awareness.
Yep.
Self-awareness is very, very critical, Mr. Adido. Many people are going through life, many adults are going through life and they don't really know who they are. You asked me a question at the beginning and you told me why I'm very fascinated with the concept of greatness. It's because every human being was designed for greatness, but not many people understand that. And parents themselves may not have had the opportunity, of having conversations about purpose and self-awareness. But we are living in a world where there's a lot of information, we are in the data age. There's technology all around us. How are we able to harness this to teach our kids to be more self-aware? Once you know yourself, Mr. Adido, then you will know what it is that you're called to do, because then you begin to understand what your gifts, what your talents, what your abilities are. Self-awareness is so critical. And in my work as a coach, this is one of the key areas that I have realized many people struggle with. And this involves even mindsets. Because if there's something that holds people back, it is their mindsets. And until people have conversations about self-awareness, what are the thoughts that I entertain in my mind? What are those beliefs I have about myself? Until people start having those internal conversations with themselves, I always tell my clients, there are two people living inside of you: your inner coach and your inner saboteur. And people who don't maximize their potential in life are people who have allowed their inner saboteur to talk to them. The inner saboteur is your inner critic. The person who will tell you, no, you can't do that. Now, who do you think you are? No, you are not educated enough. No, you are not, And when parents and teachers start having conversations with kids about purpose, because when we're talking about purpose, we are talking about discovering who we are, discovering why we are here. It elevates self-awareness. And let me tell you, a self-aware person, Mr. Adido, is not somebody that you can easily bring down. People who are self-aware, they are bold, they are confident, they are effective wherever they are put to work, because they understand what they want, they understand their gift, they understand what they are offering, and they are able to say no to this and yes to that. So for me, the most important thing I would say, parents, teachers, their role in these kinds of conversations is to elevate self-awareness for the children. And that's really what I desire to do, and that's what I do on a daily basis when I'm coaching and when I'm mentoring my clients. Yeah.
Wow, that's so deep. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to the SheLeads LiveCast happening this Thursday, the 7th of December 2023, brought to you courtesy of Zoundfall Publishers and the SheLeads Project. Today's guest has been Joan Seurei. She's helping us understand the whole subject of leading with purpose. We've been here for 1.5 hours and the discussion has been deep and insightful. I love what I've heard, many notes I have picked, and a lot of quotes that I have collected from the conversation today. The one that I'm going to walk away with is the one that you've just said a while ago. People who are self-aware, they are confident, they are bold, and they are productive in the areas that they have been put in. And you've also said something else very powerful here. We were all created for greatness, but very many people do not know this and they don't fulfill it. Those are some of the lessons that I'm picking from what you're saying today. So before we bring this to a close, I want to give you a minute to just give us your final remarks as we wrap this up, and then we call this a day.
Thank you once again, Mr. Adido. I'm really grateful, honored, privileged to have been a part of this conversation. I would talk and talk about leadership and purpose.
I know.
And I just want to leave our audience and ourselves as well with a famous quote by Mahatma Gandhi, and he said, "My life is my message." And for me, those 5 words, my life is my message. I desire for my life to be my message, and I want our audience to leave this conversation knowing that what kind of message are you giving the world? Is your life a message? Is it a message of hope? Is it a message of faith? Is it a message of service? Is it a message of compassion? We are all living our lives day in, day out, and there's a message we are giving off. We must be intentional to curate a message that will leave an impact in this world. Again, I already know what I want to be written on my tombstone. But I want for me to be able to have that written on my tombstone when I depart this earth. I must have lived it for the people that I left an impact with or in to write that on my tombstone. It's not me telling people, now when I die, write this. No. It must have been my message that by the time I depart from the face of this earth, that is what people remember me by. Because, Mr. Radido, we don't know when we'll depart this earth. And I was listening to a sermon yesterday, and this preacher just talked about time. And he said, many times we go through life, we think we have so much time, but do you really have time? And so that is my parting shot. Like Mahatma Gandhi, my prayer, my desire for myself and for each one of us here is for our lives to be our message. Thank you so much, and God bless you, Mr. Adito.
Wow, thank you so very much. That's the voice of Joan Seurei. She's helping here with the subject of leading with purpose. And I like her part in short. My life is my message. Well, those are going to be my last words. I'll leave you with the same quote. My life is my message. Make your life your message. Institutionalize purpose in your life in such a way that every bit of your leadership, every bit of your life is inspired, infused, structured, and guided by purpose. Because if you live the purpose way, you're living the impactful way. Well, this is the SheLeads LinkedIn LiveCast, brought to you by Zoundhall Publishers in partnership with SheLeads Project. And this being our last session for the year, I just want to thank all of you that have been able to be part of the conversation since we began sometime in July. And it has been an amazing journey. A lot of insights have been shared here. All the conversations that we've had here are on YouTube. If you go to YouTube, the SheLeads Global Network YouTube channel, you'll find that. Even this conversation now is being recorded. It will be posted on YouTube in a week or in a week's time, so that you can be able to revisit it and be able to at least glean from what has been discussed here today. Thank you so very much. It's been a pleasure having you and discussing this together with you. And thank you so very much, our guest, for sparing time. And as we bring this to a close, I want to wish you all a lovely holiday time and a blessed new year until we meet again in January. God bless you so very much. Good night.
God bless you. Merry Christmas, everyone. Bless you. Bye.
Bye.